Proportions. A proportion is an equation stating that two ratios are equal. And as an example of what a proportion is, if you want to write one sample out, it would be something like this. 3 over 5 is equal to 30 over 50. So these two ratios are equal. This is just 3 times 10 and 5 times 10. So these are equal proportions. So if we look here, to test and see if two ratios can form a proportion, you can simplify them the way you would a fraction to their simplest form. That's one way of doing it. Another way is to find a common multiplier. That's another possible way of doing it. And the easiest way, in my opinion, is to go ahead and use cross products to test them quickly. I'll get to what all that means in just a minute. So if you look here, determine whether the ratios in each pair can form a proportion by writing each ratio in its simplest form. Well, 6/18, if you know 6/18, if you know your multiplication tables, well, we know 2 goes into here, and we know 3 goes into here. So we know 6 goes into both of them. So this would be 1/3 as if we divide 6 in the top and 6 in the bottom. Now here, 12/40. Well, we know 2 goes into here. That would then be 6/20. That's not the simplest form yet. And then we simplify it even further by dividing 2 again into there. And this is its simplest form this is the simplest form of that there, 12/20. Now that is close, but it does not match this. So this would be a big no. They do not form a proportion, or cannot form a proportion if there was an equal sign between them. Now here, we have 1/10/12. Again, 2 goes in the top, 2 goes in the bottom. 5/6. Now here, if we think to ourselves, well, what goes in the top and what goes in the bottom? If we want to divide the top by, let's start by doing 2's. We'll just do it bit by bit. This would then be 30 over 36. Then we can divide by 2's again. This would then be 15. And these are all equivalent ratios. These two and then this one here. And then we know that 3 goes into here and 3 goes into here, so it's going to be 5/6. And just like with simplifying fractions, if I knew my multiplication tables well enough to know that this is a multiple of 12 and this is a multiple of 12, I could just do that right away. I just did it in 3 steps: 12, divide by 2, divide by 2, divide by 3. Same sort of idea, though. So yes, this does form a proportion because 5/6 and 5/6, so this would be a yes. Now finding a common multiple in some ways is pretty easy too. If you look here, all we do is we figure out, well, how do I change 40 into 160? Well, I would multiply this by 4. That makes sense, right? Okay, so therefore, this is going to be 4 times 4 to get there. So if this is times 4, then from 12 to 3 is not times 4, it's divided by 4. So it does not form a proportion. As a matter of fact, this here makes, if you look quickly and just see here, well, 12 goes into 40 about 3 times, 3 goes into 160 about 50 times. So it's way off, so that would be a no. As an example here, 12 over 15, I want to simplify this. I could do that, or I could go ahead and find a common multiple. In this case here, well, 12 and 15, it probably would be easier to do it this way. But let's do it the long way just to make sure that we understand it. If we wanted to go ahead and multiply this times, let's say times 10, it would then be 120, and just choosing times 10 because that's easy, 120 over 150. The reason why I know that's easy is because I know if I multiply this by 10, I get to 150. I know 50 times 3 is going to be 150. Then I just have to multiply this here by 3 as well. And if it is 40 times 3 is 120, So yes, it would be. Yes, it would be form a proportion if I combine those two things. Now, the second one over here, this one's even easier in my opinion. What all you do is to figure out with cross products, what you have to do is, and the reason why it's called cross products is you look at these two things. Could these form a proportion? You multiply the top times the bottom, and the bottom times the top, and see what you come up with. 6 times 15 is going to be, well, 6 times 15 is 6 times 10 plus 6 times 5. 6 times 10 is 60. 6 times 5 is 30, so that's going to be 90. Now remember that 90. 10 times 9 is 90. So the answer is yes. Isn't that easier? Just multiply the top times the bottom. Here, same thing. Multiply these two, multiply those two. If the numbers come out the same, you might want to write them down every time just to make sure it's clear. 20 times 5 is 100. 50 times 3 is 150. So, no, they cannot form a proportion. And you can do this very, very quickly, very, very easily. And that's how you figure out with proportions.